Hello again, and welcome back to All Things M365 Compliance. And I am Ryan John Murphy, Compliance Lead at Epic Global and Microsoft MVP. And as always, I'm joined by Nikki. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you. My name is Nikki Chappell. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I'm the Principal Cloud Architect at Cloudway. And today we've got our guest, Viktor Hedberg. Over to you for an introduction.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Viktor Hedberg is my name. I'm what am I? I do security things at a Swedish company called Trusec. So basically what we do is anything revolving around proactive security, even human intelligence things, threat intelligence, and of course our incident response, which is where we draw a lot of experience helping other customers to avoid having to sit on a 2 a.m. call on a Saturday with us.
Indeed. Well, thanks for joining us, Viktor. Really appreciate you giving us some time today and talking about these subjects. So one of the topics we're going to be talking about today is app governance. And me and Nikki have spoken about this a few months ago, I think it was, around having those applications governed in your environment. So the main ones that usually come up for me are always going to be those social media apps, those third-party storage apps, and so on and so forth. So give us an insight to what app governance is, what the licensing model is, and any real-world examples that you can share with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to start with actually talking about the dangers and possibilities of having third-party applications integrated with your Azure Active Directory. So as we all know, any cloud integrated app requires some level of permissions, right? We can all agree on,
Yes.
Maybe we shouldn't give this shady application all the Graph API permissions possible. So that's one of the dangers with, letting our end users consenting to all of these applications or actually using these applications on our corporate devices, because we're exposing ourselves to data leakage, data theft, and potentially even compromising the environment in total. We've seen that happening with, a phishing email coming with an app consent rather than getting your username and password.
Okay.
And it doesn't really matter how often you change your password because I'll still have access as you inside of your environment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's one of the dangers with, integrating everything. So we really want to look at, okay, what kind of applications can we allow to be integrated? And that's where app governance comes into play. So app governance inside of Defender for Cloud Apps, it helps us with, okay, Microsoft's point of view on applications themselves. So they'll look at, okay, how well do they match with regulations and standards? So you'll get an ISO scoring on your applications. You'll get a GDPR scoring on those applications. And that's basically just looking at any cloud app saying, okay, they're this good at governing GDPR related data. Now, this helps us as well when it comes to deciding on which applications should be allowed to be used on our corporate devices. Now, I'm a strong advocate of not letting you use things like Facebook, Twitter, TikTok on corporate devices at all, because I feel that corporate devices are for corporate data.
Yeah.
We shouldn't use corporate devices to access our personal life. That should be kept separately.
Yeah.
Because there's always a risk of, accidental spillover or accidental data transfer between the two.
Of course.
Now, what app governance adds to this is, of course, insights into, okay, what applications are being used. If you're using Defender for Endpoint, your devices are constantly reporting to Defender for Cloud App saying that, okay, Ryan is using GitHub a lot. Nikki is using, I don't know, Spotify on her corporate device. And that's really interesting because we'll get an insight into potential shadow IT being used inside of the corporation as well. So if we're saying that, okay, we're using Office 365 as our primary collaboration tools, and we're getting a lot of hits on the use of Dropbox, maybe we shouldn't allow that at all. That's where app governance comes in, and we can say that, okay, this is not a sanctioned app. You can't use this, effectively blocking you from accessing such apps from a corporate device. And that's really where companies need to start. They need to start that trail, or start that journey soon. Because talking about real life examples, so I mentioned we've seen these kind of illicit consent attacks happening often, frequently. We're seeing an uptick in adversary in the middle, proxying your sign-in attempts, stealing your sessions, stealing your cookies, and just posing as you, acting inside of your environment. So we really need to start taking control over our own devices, because if we don't control the devices, you don't control the identities.
Indeed.
So I've got a question just about app governance. Now, quite often people say, even in Teams, it's really easy. You go into Teams, I want to add in this app, and there's a list of apps there. They're not just Microsoft ones that you can trust, but there could be all sorts of apps that are put up on that store. Out of the box, can an end user just consent to these apps, or is it locked down? All of the controls for the apps has to go through somebody in IT for kind of approval.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the dangers I see with default settings in Azure Active Directory and in Microsoft 365 as things stands right now. So I'm regularly talking to customers about, okay, we need to ensure that your Azure Active Directory is secure prior to you starting using it. And they're like, well, it's in the cloud, it's secure, right? Well, no, it isn't. So to answer your question, Nikki, it's perfectly acceptable for an end user to consent to these Teams app right out of the box. That's a default setting, because Microsoft is promoting, end user experience. It should be easy. It should be, interesting to use. And if we're starting to clamp down on these things right after get-go, we'll have sour consumers, basically.
Yeah. So I suppose it's quite interesting if people haven't done any, haven't considered the governance before, and it has been very open, and people have been consenting to these apps, and nobody actually looks at the small print. They don't realise that they're signing up. They may say, "I want read write all users, or read write all sites, or anything," and people don't look at that. They don't even know what it means. They just happily just tick the box because they want access to the service. So I assume going in and having a look at your current environment, see what apps people are using, is a good first step for any organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually a blade inside of Azure Active Directory. You have the what's it called, like activity log for cloud apps. So you can see all the last 30 days how many cloud apps are actually being used. So stop the consent flow by blocking end user consent, basically, and go through those apps, because anything that isn't actively being used, you can safely remove. Now, my own personal experience and my personal recommendation is remove all enterprise applications, period. And get your end users to ask for consent. Okay, I need to use this application. Okay, why do you need to use it? Well, it makes things easier. Well, we don't like the level of permissions it's asking for. You'll have to make do with some other tool.
Okay. Go ahead, Victor. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine. It's fine, because I mean the permissions are, as you said, Nikki, end users aren't trained to look for these patterns, and we see a lot of instances of directory read write all permissions being consented to enterprise applications. Now that could be totally fine. I'm not saying that every application is bad. I'm just saying that you don't know who's on the other end. Actively, if they breach that environment, your environment is put at risk.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a difficult question, and we need to have some sort of tools to help us understand this. And this is where I feel that app governance really does a real good job at looking at all these kinds of metrics, giving you a risk score per app, and you can say that, okay, anything below risk score 5 is there's not even a discussion. that won't be consented at all.
I like that approach. Oh, sorry, Nikki, did I cut you off there?
That's okay.
I was just going to say I like the approval approach as well, Victor. I think that struck a memory in my mind where you wouldn't just give someone access to all file shares in your environment or any possible structure in your environment, right? Straight out the back and give them full control over those elements or those objects inside of your environment. So having that approval process in place for somebody who, within marketing, do I need to use Twitter? Do I need to use any other social media? Or do I need to share this content with an Ofcom or a regulator and I have to use Dropbox? Give the reasons why you need it. Understand why that application should be needed, but more importantly, understand what that application's permissions need from your user for them to be able to activate it and use it accordingly. Sorry, Nikki.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of like ERP systems or CRM systems being actively used by threat actors, because I can spin up like HubSpot or whatever. That's just the name that was closest to mind, because I actually use that in my own lab environment to showcase this use case.
Oh, really?
For a customer. So just spinning up a trial environment, getting a consent. Now I have full access to your mailbox. I can read all of your mails without you even knowing that I'm there.
Oh, wow.
And it doesn't matter, as I said, if you change your password, it doesn't really matter. The only way you can kick that out is by disabling the account.
And you wouldn't even know that. Yeah, in some instances. Sorry, Nikki. You wouldn't, like you say, the user would have no idea someone is trawling through their email messages.
Yeah, we've seen the use of these kinds of tools to, send out phishing emails. So they gain initial access by getting you to consent to an application. Then they use the application itself to send out phishing email, and they can even get email tracking. That's what a CRM system does. You can see how many clicks you get. So you can see, okay, how effective was this phishing email?
And all of this, if it's using these app permissions, if you've got multi-factor authentication, it doesn't provide any protection. And also, this information is not going to be logged, is it, in the unified audit log?
Nope.
So actually, if you've got an investigation, you can say, well, this person's got multi-factor authentication. You look in the audit logs and say, I can't see anything suspicious here. And that's because it's all to do with the application permissions then.
Yeah, exactly. So all of those audit trails, they're kept inside of the enterprise application, or the application layer on the other side. So you'll get at most a sign-in event that you can correlate somehow. And that's actually how we found one of the culprits. So we got a lot of weird sign-in attempts from countries where they have no business operations at all. And that's how we figured out that, okay, this is probably what happened. And then we started, dressing our hypothesis with proof, basically.
Okay. Not to go down a rabbit hole here, but is there nothing in advanced threat hunting or Sentinel that would give you some aspect of understanding? Victor has just connected to Twitter, and Twitter's had all of these permissions applied to it.
You can get alerts when a new highly permissive app gets added to your tenant. Okay. But as soon as those permissions are, sanctioned or consented, that's basically giving up control.
Yeah, wow.
So that's actually what I'm talking about when I said that, okay, we need to control devices. We need to, the device is a part of your identity. So we need to ensure that our end users can't access corporate data from anything else than a corporate device.
Okay. So if you was in a process now then, Victor, let's say I come to you as a new user. I've just logged onto my machine. I have a mobile device, which is, it's a corporate device, but I need to gain access to social media apps. Okay. I work in marketing. I need access to these apps for me to be, publishing discount codes or whatever the case may be. Okay. Yeah. As an admin who's listening or watching to this now, what's the first thing they should be thinking about when enrolling this person into that app?
So the just installing, like if you say like, okay, we need to have a Facebook or a Twitter account dressed as our company, it's our marketing people using this app, you could probably make do using a specific device for those kind of occasions. So say that, okay, this iPhone that I'm sharing right now on the screen, I can use Facebook on this device. On my own corporate cell phone, I'm not allowed to use Facebook. That's one way of looking at it. That might be, kind of a steep curve, but all of these applications, they have some level of permissions on the device itself. And when we're talking about social media, I know there's a saying, I can't remember from what documentary I saw it at, some Netflix documentary. Basically, it's saying that if the service is free, you are the product.
Absolutely.
So we need to bear that in mind.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm not saying that, okay, we need to tighten our tinfoil hats, be super paranoid about everything, but we need to have a level of respect for what these apps actually are trying to do. Now that applies to TikTok, to LinkedIn, to Twitter. I mean, they're all gathering data from you.
Yeah, of course.
Or your device.
Of course, like you just said, I think I've watched the same documentary. If the service is free, you are the product, and people don't understand when you're logging into Facebook and so on and so forth, or Twitter, or whatever the case may be, they are taking your data and they are marketing against the information that you're putting in the app or liking within the app, so on and so forth. If everybody's, I was just talking to Nick before we joined. I'm going on holiday next year and I'm looking at safaris and haven't put anything in my phone whatsoever around safaris, but now I'm getting adverts for safaris. It's that type of information. So that's one thing to bear in mind. But you mentioned sanctioned versus unsanctioned. And I guess
exactly.
That's the control on the app from within the security center of Microsoft, okay? That's what I'm assuming. Can you just give us a little bit of info around the two and how you can actually put those markers on?
So, first of all, we need to get some sort of traffic data from the devices to be able to pick up, okay, what apps are being used inside of our corporate network. Now, that's doable either via using Defender for Endpoint. That's automatically, you can integrate that with Defender for Cloud Apps, and it will automatically start reporting, okay, these apps are being used. So you can see that, okay, you're using GitHub, you're using GitLab, you're using Twitter, Facebook, eBay, whatever. So that's all done automatically. Now, if we don't have Defender for Endpoint, we still need to get that data somehow. And that's where we can actually upload firewall logs to Defender for Cloud Apps, saying that, hey, this is what the network traffic has been looking like for the last 6 months or whatever. And it can correlate to say that, okay, we're seeing usage of these, and these applications. Now, the downside of that, of course, is that it's not, continuous monitoring. So we actually need to have some sort of procedure to regularly upload these firewall logs into the different services.
So can I just confirm, when you're getting that information in, is it just the apps that you've signed in, kind of like single sign-on with app permissions, or is it the potentially the example Ryan said, you've got a Twitter account you're using corporate and you're signing in with a different set of credentials? So it might be, your personal credentials. Would it pick that up as well?
Yes, it will. So it's basically looking at all the applications, or most of the applications on that list that will pop up. They're basically web apps where we've seen usage of these web apps on your device. We're not saying that, okay, you're signing into this using your corporate identity, but we can see that you're using Facebook on your corporate laptop.
And then from a kind of a data protection viewpoint. Now, I know in Defender for Cloud App, there are some applications whereby you can pass the data protection, the sensitive information labels or blocks. So if this says internal only or highly confidential label. If you're trying to share that content with an application, you can put controls in, can't you, to block?
Yeah, that's basically the endpoint DLP stuff, right? So you onboard your device into endpoint data loss prevention, and you can say that these applications are not permitted to use sensitive. You're not permitted to use sensitive information inside of these applications, basically. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's perfectly doable.
Yeah. So
just to circle back to, okay, how can we tag apps? That's basically just, green lighting or red lighting them inside of the Defender for Cloud Apps portal. So you can say that, okay, this app is sanctioned. You can use this. If it's unsanctioned, you'll get blocked when you try to access that web application.
Okay, so that would be the next time person tries to sign in, they would not have access.
Can you condense that into groups then, Victor? So let's say I need access because I work in marketing, but Joe Blogs, who's in a global admin, he doesn't need access. So can you basically put policy access list based on the user? So if you want to sanction the app, you can have it, but only these people in this department or these people can have it rather than the rest of the environment.
So let's see here. So I'm not speaking out of terms. If you're tagging them as unsanctioned, that's basically just blacklisting them. Period. I mean, you can't use this application on your device. I don't actually know if we can do like targeted policies that way, saying that, okay, it's blocked except for these users.
Right.
It should be possible, but I don't have an answer right off the bat.
No problem.
You might be able to do that if you've got a managed device like a mobile phone. Then you can determine what applications are on that phone if the whole device is managed.
Oh yeah,
Well, you couldn't, you can't install these social media apps because you've got complete control.
Yeah, absolutely. So for mobile apps, that's perfectly doable. I was just caught up thinking, okay, what can we actually govern from a laptop point of view, basically.
Okay.
But yeah, that's totally doable. You can have like a configuration profile saying that, okay, this is the marketing department profile, so they can actually download Twitter or Facebook or whatever.
Okay.
So I think this is kind of adding in stuff then that when you're planning out these types of activity with apps, there's not just a single place that you go and manage it. You've got to think of the different touch points and look at the different controls across the different admin centers and how they can be used.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really goes, that applies to everything inside of either cybersecurity or compliance. I mean, there's no silver bullets anywhere in any portfolio from any vendor. Anyone who says otherwise is lying. Because we always need to look at, okay, from an admin point of view, okay, direct versus indirect administration. We always need to have, pick up our sights and not just looking through like a tunnel saying that, okay, if we fix this particular issue, everything's fine and dandy. And we're maybe missing out on, okay, but I can become this admin by performing a couple of steps, compromising a service principle, accessing us, blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, this is a never ending battle when it comes to securing environments, right?
And let's say, for example, then, Victor, Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, Audible, all these vendors, they all have apps, okay? That you can download from any store if you're on a Mac, Android, Windows machine. But when you sanction that app, do you still gain access to the web URL, or is that also blocked? So if I opened a browser, typed in facebook.com, when you sanction the app from without governance, does that prevent me from going to the web URL also?
So if the app is sanctioned, like
because it must have like a catalog of URLs, right? Or does it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And any app that's downloaded onto your device is basically just a web page that you're accessing as an application, at least nowadays. So if you're blocking those apps, it doesn't really matter if you're trying to access them via the browser or the fat client, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. So for anybody watching or listening, then if you sanction that app and the user tries to be a little bit sneaky and go to the URL,
Sanction is a positive,
Oh, sorry.
okay, we allow.
Yeah,
If you
beg your pardon.
unsanction it, yeah, it's
I
not
got
sanctioned for use, basically.
Right. So unsanctioned is the blocking, sanctioned is
Yep.
the allowing. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. So let me rephrase that then. So anybody listening or watching to this who unsanction the app and think that the user would be crafty enough to go to the browser and look and type in the URL, that's also blocked. So that's a good thing for Microsoft to have, because that way they're not going to get to it regardless.
Exactly. And bear in mind, we're just talking about, okay, access from corporate devices. So if you're using your corporate laptop and we say you can't access Facebook, you're not allowed to use Facebook on your laptop. You can't access it. We can't stop you from accessing it anywhere else. I mean, we only have so much control.
Okay.
So I think that's
speaking on that as well, I just want to one quick tip from my end: don't use your corporate email address when signing up for social media as well.
Yes, of course. You would hope that's a no-brainer, but the amount of times you've seen, the amount of times I've seen, and I'm sure Nikki has seen as well, people have used their corporate account for like shopping, retail sites, social media sites, and so on and so forth. And it's just like, why would you do that? You have a personal email address, use it for personal events, Sorry, Nikki, I cut you off there. Do you want to jump in?
I think it's, where you manage your corporate devices and say you can't have the personal applications on it. When you're looking at then your personal devices, it's really important to actually block your corporate access. So it's kind of, you've got this kind of wall, haven't you? Whereas on your personal devices, you shouldn't be able to sign in to your Microsoft 365 account and download the Office apps, etc. So to really kind of separate the two things.
I mean, we can't actively stop you from downloading those applications, but we can stop you from accessing corporate data from a non-governed device.
Yeah.
So that's where the second layer of protection comes in, right? So we're saying that, okay, on corporate devices, you're not allowed to use apps X, Y, and Z, right? But on your personal device, on the other hand, that's not enrolled into our device management platform. So you can't access corporate data. Sorry.
Perfect. And that's what you would want, right? So
yeah, exactly.
I think from my perspective, working mainly on the compliance side, regulators, Ofcoms, and even internal compliance within a business, whether that be legal guidance or just general compliance guidance by a compliance officer, this is telling me that app governance gives me control over the access to the app and also the governance around the app itself and who can gain access to it, if it's sanctioned, unsanctioned. But more importantly, what I'm taking from this as a compliance person is the data leakage part as well. So not using your general Azure AD identity to log into this app, have a specific one, for example, call it something like social media accounts or whatever the case may be, and completely disconnect that from your general corporate account.
Yeah.
App governance sounds great. Is it included in the E5 licensing, Victor? Or let's talk about licensing. Sorry. Where does this come in? Because this sounds like a great product, which now may sound it might be a little bit expensive.
Yeah, so that's the issue we all have with Microsoft, right? The licensing jungle, and unfortunately, the app governance is an add-on to the already existing security stuff. The same goes for, like I said prior to us starting the recording as well, that all of the new shiny cool stuff, that's all being incorporated in the add-ons, I'm afraid. So it all goes for, Defender vulnerability management. That's an add-on. So, cool. I can measure, compliance level based on sys controls or ISO standards on my servers.
Yeah.
That's an add-on. Sorry. So yeah, unfortunately, app governance is also an add-on.
Okay. So, I mean, it's great that Microsoft are bringing these products out, but they must understand there has to be a cost threshold to any corporate business, especially large ones. Is there going to be a point where people just turn around and say, it's great, but we just can't afford to do it? Then they're in a position
Um,
where they're like, Microsoft have all these products on the right hand side that not many people are using because they've adopted the E5, or do then they just create a new license, E6, E7, and bundle everything in, and then increase the cost by another £10, dollars, euros per month or something?
I mean that's the general fear, at least in my book, that customers will get to that point. Uh, what I do want to say, send with all of the listeners of this is that cybersecurity will always cost money.
Mm-hmm.
It's an uphill battle, but we need to look at it from maybe a different perspective. So, okay, if we're buying these licenses for app governance, maybe we can decommission something else. I mean,
Okay.
there's always, I mean, maybe we're using a proxy to control web traffic. Maybe we don't need to pay for that license instead, because we
Yeah.
can govern access to cloud apps using app governance. So, I mean, we need to look at it, compare apples to apples. Okay,
Yeah.
this feature inside of the Microsoft Security Suite does X.
Mm.
Do we have any other solution that performs the same kind of action? Maybe
Mm.
they cancel each other out. So if we're going this way with the Microsoft version, we can decommission what we're already paying for.
Yeah.
And another thing is that, okay, cybersecurity always costs a lot of money, I said. And when you're in an incident response engagement, all of our customers are like, it's costly. We haven't implemented this because it costs money. But once you're in that position, you basically have a carte blanche, right? You can do
Yeah.
whatever you want because, okay, it's allowed to cost money now. So basically, what I'm saying is invest in these capabilities because it'll help you not having to talk to me at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, and may cost less in the long run, right? Because like you've just said, if you've got an application out there like a web application proxy or something, some third-party product that's doing the same thing as what app governance can do, it may actually be costing you more in the long run anyway, rather
Yeah.
than just having the bolt-on license there. So if you can take the third-party system away, not pay for the infrastructure, the service support on it, the licensing on it, and then just implement app governance, that end figure might actually be reduced, and you
Yeah.
may actually have more cover.
Yep. Exactly. And I
Cool.
think that's the marketing point from Microsoft as well. That okay, if you're buying all that we offer, you can pretty much rely on those features and capabilities. You
Okay.
won't need
Okay.
a lot of other things monitoring the
Yeah.
same stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. Not to go off topic, we have customers now doing the same thing with endpoint DLP. They're moving away from these third-party products because of the cost of the licensing, the
Mm.
service cost, the infrastructure costs, and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive because some of them have to move to E5. But when you look at that round figure at the end of the year, my customers specifically, they're saving hundreds of thousands in some aspects,
Yeah.
over that annual period. So good point to take on from that perspective. We're almost out of time, but Nikki, anything from your end, or Victor, anything you wanted to add before we stop?
I just wanted to re-emphasize the thing that I've been talking about. So control your identities. Always ensure your users are signing in with MFA, preferably strong MFA, so like FIDO2 compliant authentication methods, YubiKeys, Fachan keys, whatever, or Windows Hello for Business. That's
Yep.
awesome because it will stop or prevent the adversary in the middle type of attacks. But we can't just stop with MFA. We also need to ensure that corporate data is only accessible from trusted devices. So corporate devices that we know are being managed, they're being patched, they are onboarded to the EDR platform. and we need to stop talking about MFA as a silver bullet, basically.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Sorry, Nikki, go ahead.
Yes, I think that's really important because Microsoft talk about MFA stopping 99.9% of attacks. And it is, as you say, there's this wonderful thing, you put it in and everything's perfect. And then from sort of a compliance viewpoint, we talk to our customers about, making sure you add sensitivity label and apply encryption to your documents. Then if it is leaked, nobody can get access. However, with this, using the APIs to act as you from behind the scenes, they're going in as you. And if you've got access to the corporate secrets because your account can unencrypt it, therefore they've got the keys to the safe now, haven't they? They can steal all the data because they can view it unencrypted. So I think that's really interesting thing to consider as well.
And of course, the global admins always have the super user feature when it comes to information protection. So they can always elevate themselves to decrypt anything that you have encrypted.
That's very good.
We need to protect those accounts a little extra because they're basically super duper admins inside of anything that revolves around Microsoft Cloud stuff.
Yeah.
So
indeed.
Not just your Azure AD, your compliance, your Azure infrastructure, your security infrastructure. I mean, if you're using Defender for Endpoint on domain controllers, your global admins are de facto domain admins.
Oh, wow. So they've got the key to the kingdom then.
Yeah. So we really need to ensure that our global admins are signing in from trusted devices.
Yeah, indeed. I really like how you emphasize the word really there as well. So food for thought for anybody watching or listening. If you didn't know that, now you know that. So keep control of them. Don't have lots and lots of global admins. I've seen places that have had 10, 12, 15 global admins. Some of them have left and their accounts are still enabled.
I've seen guests with global admin permissions.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. B2B guest accounts.
Wow.
Oh, it's our MSP. We trust these guys. No, don't do this. It's a bad idea.
Never. Guest accounts with global admin. That's a new one. And on that scary thought, I think we should end the podcast. So, Victor, once again, thanks for giving us your time today. This has been really good and really informative. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Indeed. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.